Okay, so there's two parts. First, about our talking about the choose how the ICFE descriptor has been implemented into the ONAP project, and the second, I will talk about more about the interactive activities between the two communities, by the members. So the first one. Actually, ONAP has a larger scope than our ICFE minor. So for the ONAP, at the onboarding side, the allow multiple options, as the onboarding module. For example, our spec-based, like the ICF Soldier 1 and Soldier 4. Those IC compliant module is one of the options. So, and they have other options like, heat-based, and another one, they call it like the ONAP DM. That is one already existed in the ecom. But from the internal side, one of the big goal in their future release is to have a single internal module that will run in the whole ONAP system for the composition, administration, and also other lifecycle operations. But right now, there are two internal modules used in ONAP. And one we call it the ONAP SDC8. That what I said. This is the one already exists in the ecom, which is the one of the seed project for the ONAP. And another one, it's a newly introduced in ONAP, so we call it ONAP R2+. That one is based on the ICFE spec. So for the SDC8 module, they already have some limitations, and for that one, basically, if you onboard based on heat, the ONAP project, for example, like the SDC, it will transfer the heat-based descriptor to the SDC8, and this module right now many used in the VCP use case. And there's a link you can find the detail about this SDC8 module. Another one, like what I mentioned, we call it R2 and R3 because this one is newly introduced in ONAP, and many by the many ICFE members. And that one. Because this one has introduced things in Beijing release, so for that one, right now it's not based on our latest spec. It's based on, if I remember correctly, it's based on for example, for the information module part, it's based on the 2.4.1, and for the solder 1 part, it's based on the 06.0 version. And this one, it's mainly based on Tosca, and we use that module for the VLT use case. And for that one, if we onboard based on this module in the internal side, we don't need to do the change. So that's the link. So we have Ting already in his presentation mentioned about the data type that Solder 1 has specified. So for the in ONAP we use some of the data type, and I think most of them it's the same in the in our spec, but for some part, they do some modification and extensions. I will talk about some of the examples in the next several slides. But for that one, I already mentioned this one is not based on the latest spec. We introduced in the Beijing release, which is the beginning of this year. So in ONAP, they still use the old version, based on the ONAP requirement, they only support one WinF deploying flavor, and they only support that to describe a WinF external CP based on the one exposed from the video CPD. And it does not support the scaling and instantiation level. If you remember, Atu mentioned, we in our Soldier 1 spec, we introduced a lot of policy, but those does not introduced in ONAP. And for the lifecycle management interface, does not support either. So here, in ONAP, they have some example that ONAP, in the ONAP R3 module, that they add some extensions, like, the WinF reserve CP, logo, guide, all the inject files. All those are based on the ONAP requirement, but and those one haven't been introduced in the SNFA spec. But here, what I wanted to show is to say that the SNFA module it's extensible. So if even ONAP introduce those new properties, it can also work together for the SNFA specification. So secondly, we're talking about more about the cooperation and some activities that the member company has been made for the that we first introduce some of our spec into the ONAP and how the ONAP influence our spec. So those are two examples that I would like to share. First one is about the scaling module. In our spec, we have our scaling. We have the delta initial, and we have several the delta level concept in our scaling when we use. And we do some modification for our module. So right now, this module can be easily mapped to the SDC 8 module. So for example, the delta initial, we can easily map to the base module, and those delta levels we can map to those add-on modules. And another example I would like to show is that. In ONAP, they do some extension, and right now some of the extension has been accepted by the SNFA spec, like the V nickname, and also for in some like those things are not exactly introduced into the spec, but some of the concept like the CIDI and the gateway gateway IP, those concept has been introduced in our spec. So if you search for the latest spec, you will find those information. So those are two examples that we the member company has made between each other. I also mentioned in the beginning of my presentation that ONAP allow multiple onboarding choices, and one of their goals is to have to a single uniform internal module. One of the approach has been discussed within the ONAP is that the onboarding module, or whatever it's the IC based or other technology, it were like for some translate or enrich. So the onboarding module were transferred to the internal module. But one of the the issue right now we face is that the SNFA spec, the spec-based module has to be consumed by the IC compliant component, like the WinF manager or the NFAO. So during those translate and enrich procedure, how to guarantee that information that the vendor on board has not been lost, or how to guarantee that some SNFA compliant project can consume those internal modules. So those are the challenges that right now we face in the ONAP for those subject. The first part, I'm finished it for the cooperation for the ONAP and SC. So the second part, I think the Paul will introduce how the ICNFE and between the OSM. I think if you have a question, maybe ask now, or we finish all the presentation. Yeah, I'm finished. Yes, this is the last page. Okay.
Best thing to do is just I invite Paul up to our same part, and then we can do a quick Q&A.
Yeah.
So thanks,
Okay.
Shitao.
Yeah.
So come on up. Can we switch to the OSM presentation? There you go. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's working? Yeah. Oh. Good morning or afternoon. So my name is Paul. I'm the vice chair in OSM. So what I'm planning to talk about here is, first of all, how OSM is working with CNFE ISG, a bit about what specifications we do support and what we plan to support going ahead. I will not talk too much in detail about this. It will be quite high level, but I will announce that we have an OSM workshop after lunch, so please go there, where my OSM colleagues from Telefonica, VMware, and Whitestack will be presenting OSM in much more detail. So, all right. So just to make it clear a bit around the scope of OSM when it comes to HCNFE ISG. So here we have the logical architecture from HCNFE ISG, and we see how OSM maps, where we implement the NFE orchestrator and the generic VNF manager. So this is a logical architecture. One thing to just say immediately is that this OR VNFM interface is internalized in OSM. So we do not support that directly internal, but we are looking into how to support that externally and considering support of that later. So that's the scope. And yeah, so OSM is a quite large and diverse community. So more than 100 members we have many operators working in OSM, giving input on requirements, what we need to have support for urgently. Then we also have a big community of different vendors and other companies within orchestration management, service assurance, SDN, security, and so forth. So this is giving a lot of value to OSM. And the way we work with Etsy and FEISG is, Etsy and FEISG is providing a lot of specifications and standard documents that we are consuming. So we are reading those, studying those, and those are extremely important for the work we do in OSM. Both around the architecture framework, and especially also on the information and data models, API definitions, and last but not least, also the test specifications are extremely important. So we consume those, we implement OSM, specify how the architecture should be, and then we get a lot of learnings, practical learnings, both from the implementation of it and also from the use of it when we use OSM. Then we feed that back into Etsy. One thing we do is to release white papers, especially around the launch of the releases we have. And we also contribute into the different work groups, especially around the information models, where we have given feedback on more than 100 points, which we have experienced issues with, or where we need enhancements from the practical learnings in implementation and use of OSM. Then we have also published a white paper, which I encourage you to read. This gives a very quite detailed view on how we experience the use of Etsy and FEISG standards. That's kind of the work model, and this is working very fine. So something we will continue doing. So just also, this is probably the only picture I have on the working of OSM. So we have the NFVI and the Vim at the bottom, open source mono implementing the NFVO and the VNFM. Then we have the VNF package and network service package, and also the day 2 operations coming in via the Northbound API. And So what happens is that we, first of all, we instantiate the VNFs. Then we drive day one operations to configure the VNFs to make them operational. That is definitely, that needs to be supported in an NFVO and VNFM. But what we also support is the day two operations. So you can actually drive day two operations from OSM. And that is something we believe is extremely important. So whether it's configuring an APN policies in the VNFs and so forth based on needs coming from monitoring or needs coming from customers and so forth. That can be driven by OSM. So then, I mean, this figure is, to the left is well known to all of us. So this is, again, the logical architecture of ETSI NFV-ISG, where you map the different standards and specifications. So, I mean, what is mostly important for us is, of course, the ones pointing to the different reference points and interfaces that we do need to relate to. So on the bottom here, this is not something that we implement directly, but of course, when it comes to acceleration technologies, we do support enhanced platform awareness, like CPU pinning, SRIOV, NUMA awareness, huge pages, and so forth. That is supported. Then for the IFAS 5 and 6, we do not support that directly. I mean, what we implement is towards the different VIMs, like VMware, OpenStack, Amazon, and also towards SDN, like Open Daylight, Floodlight, ONOS. So we do relate to those interfaces. When it comes to the top, on where the SOL specs are coming, this is definitely of importance to us. So I mentioned, like on the SOL 3 specification, this is internalized in OSM, but we are considering to support that for specific VNFMs. So the list of what we do support today and what we are planning is given here. So you see we do support SOL 5, which was implemented in OSM Release 4. We do also support SOL 4 on the VNF package. On the SOL 2 specification, so what we have experienced is that when we interwork and with different VNFs, there's a lot of different APIs and interfaces to consider. And we have kind of been supporting a lot of different things in OSM, and we also support SOL 2 from that point of view. But there is ongoing work to make it easier to use the SOL 2 specification in OSM. Then we do consider the SOL 3 support, as I mentioned, so that we can integrate specific VNFMs, and also SOL 6, where we do have a Yang-based model in OSM. And also remember that many of the OSM members were supporters of the establishment of SOL 6. Finally, also we do participate in NFV plug tests, where we see a lot of good communication and cooperation going on. So we did participate in the API validation track, and also providing feedback into the open APIs and conformance test methodology. So we have been part of all the 3 ETSI NFV plug tests so far, contributing into this, and that's something we will continue doing. So, I mean, I've said this already. We have focused a lot into contributing our experience and learnings and needs into the information models improvements in ETSI NFV-ISG. Then I also want to refer again to the white paper. Please have a look at it, because it has many important points for consideration into ETSI NFV-ISG. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention and open for questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Questions for Shitao or Paul? Yes, Bruno.
Yes, a question on this OSM presentation. In slide 7, you indicated that you are working on making the SOL 2 easier to use. Can you just give an example of the things you are working on?
Yeah, so I mean, it's when we implement or use the SOL2 specification, I mean, that has not been done much up until now because it has not been supported by many. But if you can somehow implement those specifications so that they can be directly consumable in, like in a charm, where you can go in and you can have some pre-specified ways of using those interfaces. And then for the VNF vendors coming in and more directly using those based on REST APIs is one way of doing it. But this is early in the process and something that we are looking more into. But we want to make it easier for the VNFs to come in and more directly consume the SOL2 specifications.
Any other questions for open source communities for ONAP or OSM? All right, yes.
So what's the big differences between this OSM and this ONAP? So two different implementations are just competing or cooperating? This kind of.
You want me to respond to that one? I will let ONAP.
I like to be neutral.
Yeah,
so
sure, I can. I mean, so we do implement similar things, indeed. I think ONAP might have a bigger scope than OSM, implementing more into the higher levels, at least historically. So those are two solutions that are implementing the same things, basically. But there are also two solutions that might interoperate. I mean, plugging the OSM orchestrator into ONAP can be one way of doing it, whereas ONAP is doing a lot more on the top, and OSM is also doing much more than what I presented there today. So I guess both the communities can leverage from each other. But yeah, there are two options that you can use. Sure, if you want to add something, Shitao, or.
Shitao.
External.
Is your mic on? You still have mic on, right?
Yes, do you have? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't have much to add on the view from Tao, but I do agree that Tao has a large scope than the what I said Mino or the open source Mino, and they are something overrated, but they may use different option for the implementation. But some of the concept you can have the same. For example, like you can use some of the concept in the OSM in ONAP, but right now there's no such work done yet.